Welcome. In this lecture, we're going to look at chapter 20 and we're going to talk about romantic opera and we're going to talk about Italian romantic opera. In this lecture, we're going to talk about Italian opera and a lot of the opera coming out of Italy from the 1830s forward is in a style called bel canto. Okay. And bel canto translates into beautiful singing. The term was coined by Rossini, who was a phenomenal composer of Italian opera, especially in the 30s, 1830s, and 40s. So, some of the earlier creators of this bel canto style included Donizetti, Bellini, um, and the emphasis of this style is on these very, very beautiful and very lyrical melodies. Okay, everything is about showcasing the singer's talents and lyricism. Okay, this style is exemplified in a lot of the operas by Rossini. Okay, and it's really influential into the music of Puccini and Verdi. Okay, and these are the two composers that we're going to look at. We're definitely going to look at Giuseppe Verdi, and we're going to look at his opera La Traviata. So again, just remember, it's an emphasis on beautiful, very lush lyrical melodies. The orchestra for a lot of these melodies is going to provide a simple harmonic support. Sometimes it's going to be in the background. Okay, sometimes they'll do maybe like an oompa kind of thing. Um, it's not going to be in the forefront. Okay. Another thing we'll have is in this style is you're going to have exalted, the leading opera singers. Now, these opera singers of the period, they become rock stars in and of their own right. You know, the lead soprano or the lead tenor, mainly lead sopranos in the female roles, definitely led to this idea of a prima donna or diva. Okay, people would flock to hear these specific individuals perform their arias and perform in their roles in opera. So we have here an excerpt from La Traviata, which is an opera by Giuseppe Verdi, and this excerpt kind of it is really is in the style of this bel canto or beautiful singing. Let's listen. Giuseppe Verdi. Now, there's going to be one person in the 19th century that writes Italian opera, and it sets the bar or the tone for Italian opera. Okay, and that's going to be this guy, Giuseppe Verdi. His dates are 1803 to 1901. You got a picture of him here over right there for you. And he's a very, very important person in Italian opera. Okay, he's the most popular opera composer throughout Europe. His music becomes very, very famous during his lifetime. Okay, his operas are performed more than any others, and even today, like the Met, Covent Garden, these opera companies of today, they're still performing his operas like Il Trovatore, La Traviata, and so forth. So they're still very, very important operas that we look at even today. A lot of his early dramas, some of them were based on political revolution, freedom. Okay, and during this time in the mid 1800s, mid 19th century, and you start to see Italy was not like the country we know of it today. Okay, it was basically a series of city states where Rome would be a specific region, maybe Florence would be a specific region, Venice would be a specific region, and it wasn't codified. There was no unity. But during the mid 19th century, there was a big push to unify Italy, and drew support for unification. And what happens is people get behind Verdi and his music to really as a symbol of national Italian identity. So he's definitely a very very important political figure during this time period as well. So we're going to look at in this lecture into his middle period of writing operas, and we're going to look at the opera La Traviata. It's probably hands down his most famous opera next to an opera called Il Trovatore. It was written in 1853, and the drama turns into domestic themes and personal conflict. Okay, one of the things that makes this opera kind of special is they're shifting from dramas about the supernatural or other worldly events to they're heading towards what we call realism, or we're looking for conflicts or drama that can relate to everyday characters. Okay, and this is one of those operas that looks to do that. Okay, he has the last two of his operas are based on Shakespearean dramas, Othello and Falstaff, and again, Shakespeare is huge in the Romantic period. Okay, people love reading his plays, and people are taking his plays and using them as plots and making operas about them. So it's not uncommon to see that, and Verdi does this. He sets Othello, and I believe his last opera is going to be Falstaff. Verdi's musical style. Okay, in his musical style, we're going to see a lot of you have conflict either on the personal or national level. Okay, and it's kind of the root of every emotion. Okay, he's very very clear when it comes to expressing that emotion. Okay, emotional states are almost melodramatic. Well, again, this is opera. Okay, and keep in mind when we express our emotions, usually what happens is that the plot will go along through recitatives, which we'll talk about. With a few terms we'll talk about in a second. But when we get to our arias or soloists, they're going to sing an aria talking about this emotional state that they're in, maybe this problem that they're going to deal with, or how they're processing these emotions. Okay, and that's what a lot of the arias are about in Verdi. Okay, so we do see dramatic character portrayal. Okay, a couple things that really make Verdi's opera so successful. I mean, there's no one specific element. It's a myriad of many different elements. One of the main elements is having memorable melodies and musical contrast. And I'm gonna state that it's important because even back in the 19th century, one of the things that people were the benchmarks that people said, hey, is this going to be a good aria? How do we know? So the thought was, if people walk away from an opera on that evening and they're singing the melody or the music, if it's in their head and they're able to sing it as they walk away, well, that was a successful opera. And we see this with Verdi in a lot of his arias and a lot of his operas. Now, a couple things we wanted, a couple terms we want to know. We want to talk about recitatives. And in the past, in the classical period, the harpsichord maybe roll a couple chords, and the characters will maybe half sing, half talk about like the plot and so forth. And recitative would function that way to push that plot along. Well, Verdi has these recitatives as well, but we have a new term where it's recitativo accompagnato. And that just means the orchestra is going to play a larger role in this recitative, okay? And it does this, the characters are still going to talk about the plot twists, and it's going to function to push the plot forward. But these accompanied recitatives, that's what it translates to, it's going to function to smooth the transition from recitative to aria. And we're going to see basically a much smoother connection throughout the entire scene or throughout the entire act. Arias are going to really push the singers to their utmost range, maybe their utmost limits. Again, the arias in opera were at the time they were usually written for specific singers. Okay, that was not uncommon, and they're really, really virtuosic, and they're done to really showcase the singer's ability. Again, people went to opera, yes, to see for the entertainment and so forth, but if they had a most very popular singer, remember, they're divas, they're the rock stars, people went to operas to see specific singers sing. Okay, and this is another highlight of the bel canto style. So I have another example here of an aria, and listen to the virtuosity. And you can hear she's singing these powerful dramatic notes over this full orchestra, kind of closing out this piece. I mean, it's almost kind of heroic. And this is a way that Verdi kind of brings the aria to a close and lets us know, hey, we had this kind of dramatic conclusion. La Traviata. So we're going to talk about Verdi's opera La Traviata. It's probably his most important, probably most popular opera that we have. And it was written in 1853. The title translates to "Women Gone Astray." It pits the passionate love against middle class morality. It's basically about this character Violetta, who she's trying to leave her situation in life through finding true love. And it's based on the character based on a play, Camille, by Alexander Dumas. We're going to look at the aria Un Felice from La Traviata, and it comes at the end of Act 1. There's two characters. There's Violetta and there's Alfredo. Alfredo's in love with Violetta, and they're at this party. The party takes place in the Parisian salon around 1850, and the alcohol is kind of hitting him right now, and he's feeling pretty good. And so what does he do? He goes and he professes his love to Violetta. Hey, I love you. I want to spend my life with you. And what does Violetta do? Well, she rejects him at first. Okay, and that's how the act concludes. Later on in Act 2, we realize, hey, they get together. So that's what's going on in the aria. So let's listen. So this is the aria Un Felice. And then right after, we have the duet, Amor, or Love. After the aria and the duet, we finally come to Sempre Libre, which is the final song of Act One. Okay, so we have the two characters on stage, Violetta and Alfredo, and she basically, he presses her love to her. She kind of says, oh no, put the brakes on, and she sings this aria called Sempre Libre. It basically means, forever free. She wants to be independent. She wants to be free. So that's what the aria is about. Now, this aria, though, it's a specific type of aria called a cabaletta. Okay, and basically a cabaletta is a fast aria, a fast piece, rather virtuosic, and the function of it is to kind of wrap everything up, and, have a dramatic exit for the characters. So we're going to see some dramatic singing, some virtuosic, very lyrical singing, and it's going to play. It's going to have a lot of plot and character depth as well. The first part leading up to it, though, is this recitative accompagnata, or company recitative. So you're going to hear the orchestra getting this aria set up. Let's listen. And as you can listen, we're getting set up for this aria. The accompaniment is kind of fragmented. You have little spits here and there and so forth. Maybe the solos have like a mini cadenza, or the rhythm will be kind of fluid. And that's what these accompaniment recitatives are about. Now, let's go listen to Sempre Libre. And this is the cabaletta that I was talking about. It's energetic, it's fast-paced, and it has a lot of dramatic singing. Now, the actual end of Act 1 I have on Canvas, so you definitely want to go and watch it acted out in its entirety. There's subtitles there, and it's a really dramatic ending. It's a really great way to end the act. So this concludes Chapter 20. We were talking about Italian opera and the music of Giuseppe Verdi.